welcome to Show Up, Stand Out Online Visibility Series for Entrepreneurs. My name is Juliette Stapleton. I'm known as the Queen of Visibility, and I have another queen in the house. Guys, I am delighted and excited to introduce some of you, or introduce the queen, another queen, the branding queen, Desislava Dobreva. And not only she is the branding queen, she is also an award-winning brand strategist, TEDx speaker, amazing one, by the way, and published author, amongst many, many other things. So Desislava, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me, and I absolutely love how you say my name. Say it again. Say it again, please.
Desislava.
Yes.
This is like dirty talks. Guys, we connected on many levels, and I'm part of Desislava's BBS, Badass Branding Squad as well, membership, which is absolutely fantastic. But we're going to talk about things that I think that this conversation is going to be brilliant. We're going to talk about audiences. We're going to talk about aligning the people you attract with your brand, or how this whole thing works, because of all people, who else can I ask about it but Desislava? Desislava grew a huge audience, right? And grew her brand from scratch, from absolutely scratch. In about 2 years? Was it 2-3 years?
Well, I grew it to the point where it was almost 100,000 followers in about 2 years. And that's how long it took me to, well, actually it took me 8 months to get to a 6-figure business. I think that's probably more impressive than the whole follower thing, because followers don't really mean anything, right?
I actually agree with that. I agree with that. And I've witnessed that. I'm not going to go into many details, but I've witnessed that when I was supporting my husband's band, which entered the competition, was put together for just a competition, and got much more votes from people who were excited than another competitor with huge following. Following means nothing unless they're engaged, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So let's just address the elephant in the room, and tell me in your own opinion, what makes you the branding queen?
You know what makes anybody anything? What other people say about them. There's this thing that people say, perception's reality, that I somewhat agree with. I never used to call myself that. I honestly thought it was very annoying when people called themselves the queen of anything. And there I am in an interview, and both of us call ourselves that. But that's because about 2 years ago, one of my clients, who you know, Michael Kalisperas, he's also in BBS, he came to one of my events in London, and we were shooting a testimonial video, and he said, yeah, Desi really is the branding queen. And I heard that weeks later when I was sent the testimonial, and I thought, oh, this is great positioning for my brand. And after I published it, it picked up. People kept saying it, and I finally came to terms with it and started using it after a few months.
I agree with you, actually. My perception was exactly the same. I would be saying like, oh, Jesus, this is very enough, or, what is this? But when you try it out, and the way other people, how they take to it in a way, that's when it says to you, okay, this is working, this is a good thing, and you just stick to it. And it doesn't matter what you think. Maybe it's enough, maybe it's not, maybe, if Elvis was called the king of rock and roll, maybe he thought it was enough. And yet,
yeah.
How do we know him? Just as the king of rock and roll, right? So that's how it works. So you said that your audience now is something like over 100,000.
Almost 100,000. I actually got rid of a lot of people this year. Ever since 2019 started, I said to myself, you know what? I don't care about a 6-figure audience. I care about an engaged audience. So I literally removed like 10,000 people from my audience.
Not to that extent, but I did the same. I once deleted 75% of my business page of people that just were wrong, not target audience, not people who would really even get what I'm saying. So this I totally understand. What are the advantages though? Of course you have to build some sort of audience. Like if nobody sees you, how do they know that you're there, right? So of course we start with building an audience as well. But if somebody is just starting, because my target audience are probably people who are only just beginning. to show up. That's what I empower them with. But why would they need to focus on building an audience, and how to approach this in the right way?
Yeah, so I know we just said that followers don't matter unless they're engaged, right? You're going to get so many people, especially if you're just starting out with visibility online, with working on your brand. So many people will tell you something very false. Followers don't matter at all. It's quality above quantity. And I always ask that person, okay, but where the hell does the quantity come from? Like, how are you going to get engaged people and clients and a loyal community if you don't have a certain number of people following you? And obviously, if you have 1,000 people following you, very few of them will be clients and customers. So it's always better to grow that audience, right? And so one of the best ways to grow the audience it's actually pretty simple. Find 3 people you trust, who you know are legit, who you know are really, really good at what they do. Do your due diligence, though. That's a lot of these. And make sure that they're not shady, that they're not scammers, because that happens way more than you'd imagine online. And connect with them. Ask them to interview you, or depending on how much your authority is, how high your authority is, ask to interview them, right? Suddenly, you have this entirely new audience that opens up to you, like a completely new door. And if it's 3 people, that's 3 doors with a massive room full of people there, depending on how big their audience is, right? This is how I grew. I was showing up in Facebook groups, being interviewed by people all over the place 3 years ago. And that's how I quickly grew to about 20,000 followers in the first couple of months. And that's where my business started picking up.
This is actually so true. When I look back, my biggest audience building and in a way client attraction as well was through the interviews. And I'm so glad that I just decided to create my own show straight away, pretty much in the first months that I was, I decided I'm going to be visible, and I created and that's exactly what I did. I reached out to people who were just above me, so obviously I didn't reach out to Tony Robbins or anyone who definitely wouldn't even reply, right? But to approach an expert and say, can you share with me, someone who has done it for a year, 2, 3, someone ahead of you, and share your expertise with me. A lot of people are looking for fresh audiences, because it's not always about how big my audience is as a host, but it's about the fact that it's a fresh audience. And, and it's still, I've had private clients who paid me a lot of money from an interview they saw on YouTube somewhere with someone else that I didn't even ever think that would be a client attraction exercise. And yes, it is. And an interesting thing about the interview that I noticed is that, and why I started doing them in the beginning, it's easier to do an interview than do a live video when you're solo there. And that's Lucifer, by the way, guys. This is our advisor and partner in crime, and everything is around him, so he has to be part. But you know what? Cats and dogs are welcome in my world. So
especially if they're part of the brand, right?
But I think make it. That's what, make it. If you have a pet and you love your pet, that's part of who you are, right? So if we're talking about the branding, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what is a brand. I don't think that people actually understand in general sometimes when you're talking about brand, and they're like, they think that brand is Coca-Cola or McDonald's.
Yeah, I have been interviewed so many times, and so few people have ever asked me that question, because everybody assumes that, number one, my audience just knows, right? But the thing is, oftentimes you don't know. And if you don't know, your audience probably doesn't know either. And it's simpler than it looks, really. Yeah, sure, Coca-Cola is a brand, but so are you. Every single person in the world that exists has a brand. I know that I see a lot of people saying this one sentence: I don't have a brand yet, but I'll create one soon. No, you do have a brand. Maybe you want to create a new one, maybe start another business, but whether you're a 9-to-5 employee, whether you're a 5-year-old kid or a business owner, you have a brand. And the fact that you don't know you have a brand is not the end of the world. It just means that you're not managing it properly yet. You don't have your brand strategy. You don't have your social media strategy. You are not using your brand as leverage to find better opportunities, to make more money, to make more impact. So to answer the first question, what branding really is, branding to me, because there's no official definition, which is highly annoying, I'm guessing, for people who are Googling it, I came up with my own. Branding is identity and perception. It's who you are and who people think you are. and those need to match, right? They need to be the same. If they're not the same, if people don't see you the way you see yourself, then there's a gap and you need to rebrand yourself so that they can understand you better.
I think that what starts confusing people, and this, guys, this is very simple. And as Desislava just said, everyone is a brand already because for who we are, right? The difficulty with majority of people is communicating that and aligning, as you just said, aligning this with the perception. And that's where you need a strategy. That's where you need to really know your brand and who you are, and, you know, and putting through, you know, just taking time to brainstorm it in a way, but not brainstorm to create something new. Just brainstorm who you are. That's a very beneficial exercise at every level, to be honest. It's not just for marketing, or it's not just for your business. It's really, really good to know for yourself, you know, what do you stand for? What are your values and things like that? And I think that with Desislava's and with her programs, I find that the clarity is so easily gained in a way, because the way you put it through and the questions you ask are very, very simple questions, you know, that in the online world, people overcomplicate things. They always think that something is more complicated and needs to be than really is. But it's the simple things and the simple principles that really do work. So just with, like, how would you, just in general, how would you then go about aligning what you want people to perceive you as and who you are with what they actually think about you? Because very often people attract the wrong audience. Very often they attract people who are not aligned with them, but for some other reasons, and they don't understand why. So would you point them in the right direction, or at least point them why?
Yeah, so usually the reason why is, I mean, probably not the answer everybody wants, but you just have not worked on your brand strategy. Because what Juliette just says, like exactly what you just said, the purpose and the brand values, and the origin story, those are the core aspects of your brand strategy. A brand strategy sounds like something really fancy. It really isn't. Yes, it usually takes a professional to like really nail it for you, but you can do it yourself. It would just take you ages. It did for me when I was starting out, but I did do it. So the reason you're attracting the wrong people is usually because if you are unclear on what your brand really is, your audience is unclear as well. And that leads to confusion on their part, which leads to overwhelm. And confused people, they don't buy. Confused people don't even stick around. They come back from time to time, but they will never actually buy from you because they're not sure what value you can bring in their lives.
It's so true. It's so true. And this is what I see in many people, and some of my clients as well, where they try and do everything. They say, well, I'm so multi-talented, but I can also do this and this and this, and I'm going to miss out on this, you know, audience if I start only talking about this thing. And then they get very confused about the ideal client, because that ideal client might not want both things. It might be, you know, one thing. So, you know, for me, I went through the whole confusion and the whole talking about everything. And as Desislava, myself, I came to some conclusions and clarity. And actually, I will be honest with you guys, the whole Queen of Visibility, the whole shift was literally within a week of me even knowing Desislava. There was an effect, that immediate effect, that when I was listening to her, and I was just following her free posts, even that was before, you know, I think I just joined the BBS, but it was just shift in my head where all this whole brainstorming and everything, it came to very clearly, and then I saw it just like this, visuals, the tagline, how to present myself. And one of the biggest, you know, for me, one of the biggest mindset shifts in terms of, especially in terms of the ideal client and how to focus on one thing, was that the ideal client is always the essence of them, the values, and, you know, what we're talking about, the brand is always going to be aligned with yours. But for every product that you have, there is an ideal client. And you really need, that's where, yes, there are different people that you're targeting. So but you focus on one product at a time.
That's actually a great point. I was just finishing a client's brand strategy today, and I was so reminded of that, because with him, he currently targets the completely wrong audience, which I think is what a lot of people do when they are very afraid to believe that their expertise actually doesn't only apply to beginners, right? Most of our expertise applies to both to beginners and people who are making millions in their business, but somehow we feel self-conscious about working with those people, right? Those people, they're special, they're better than us, which is really not true. And so with him, he was targeting those people. Sounds so evil, those people. Instead of doing what he really wants, which is working with people who already have a successful business and helping them scale that business. So you need to remember that you have something called sub audiences, right? You have your main target audience. Always have a main one. Like, this is your ideal client. This is, for me, for example, these are people who already have a successful business but want to scale it by finally focusing on their brand. Right? It's not people who are trying to leave their 9-to-5 job, but that is a sub audience of mine. And for that, I have separate products, right? So for most people, you would have, let's say, a course for the people who are beginners in what you teach in your area of expertise. And then you would have either one-on-one coaching or consulting, a membership site. So remember, it's not a one size fits all. You don't have just one product and one target audience. Your messaging has to shift depending on who you're targeting, especially with your social media posts. You cannot target all of your sub-audiences with the same message.
That is so true. And you do that very strategically. I see how there's waves, you'll be always talking about just one product. Then that product is that launch, or that product is, the talk is finished, a little bit of awareness, again, the new product, and then there's a whole 2 weeks or whatever you're going to take talking about, depending obviously on the price tag, I suppose, as well. Sometimes, it takes longer for high ticket products, but it is important. What I've noticed, and it's an interesting observation for me, I am very intuitive like person. I just get everything goes through my gut. My brain, it comes after my gut. So if I start focusing on I want to work with businesses that are, successful and want to scale, that my brain, it doesn't work, right? I have to get this connection. And what I see, especially even recently, I was running the live video challenge, and everybody I attracted into that challenge we all shared that brand. So, if you are one of those people like me, then you sometimes just feel, if you find it confusing, sometimes focusing on the numbers or these kind of factual things, and you're going through your heart, you need to remember you're going to attract people who are like you, but they are all on a different stage of their development. Some of them are ahead of you even in the business. And that's what you're talking about, having people who already built a business and they want to scale up. But you, with what you're doing, very likely can slot in and help them do that. I have done this when I took a client before my business was even making, any sort of significant money. I took a client on who had $250,000 business and wasn't online, and I brought her online, and now, the results are insane, and so many people, and even a lot of people coming to me, obviously seeing what happened, and so many other people were touched by that person being visible to them online, through which I did. And it didn't matter that our businesses didn't align in how much money we were making at the time, and I think that that's exactly what you just said about somebody wanting to work with businesses who are bigger, but they're afraid because they are not making that money themselves. And it holds them back. And yet that doesn't matter. It's about how you can slot into this person's needs.
That's actually, if I can add something here, that's equally as important. So you said something really important here. You said we attract people who are similar to us, right? But a huge mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they target themselves, even if that's not their ideal client. So something we need to remember is we're not looking for a best friend here. We're looking for a person to help based on our expertise. So oftentimes, we're looking for person who are exactly like us, same hobbies, same interests. Vegans, if you're a vegan, you're looking for other vegans. That's such a huge thing that I keep seeing. When it's really not just unnecessary, but it hurts your business. So the one thing to target people on, and I say that in all my paid resources, is worldview. It's not their interest, it's not their hobbies, it's not what they think of you or themselves, it's their worldview. And your worldview will absolutely be similar, most likely, to the people that you're targeting. even if nothing else is. Like you may be a super religious person and you may draw in an atheist, but then there's a worldview somewhere in there that you guys share, and that's why they were attracted to you.
That is absolutely bang on. Thank you so much for clarifying, because this is exactly what's happening. People are completely different. They come in from sometimes completely opposite ends of some sort of spectrum, but because you're sharing, and I think that they're saying, but how do I, how does it happen? Because you don't need to focus sometimes on targeting, say, if you're a vegan, targeting other vegans. All you have to do is sometimes talk about it. Talk about your own thing. And, if somebody, for example, I'm not a vegan, right? However, and Desislava is. But however, that doesn't polarize us or doesn't pull me apart from her, because I understand exactly what she's doing. And who knows, maybe I'm on that journey and that's why I feel attracted to this. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's definitely something that sometimes it's just intuitive. It's something that you're going to discover in your journey, and you're attracted to somebody because of that. But it's kind of it's a little bit of a woo-woo area, the intuition and everything, but I think that we are energy beings, and that's how we get attracted. But you do have to be selective, and it comes down to telling stories, isn't it? When you tell stories, rags to riches, or things like, you sometimes tell wrong stories in your business, and that attracts wrong people, and you have to be strategic in your content on what stories you're telling. And although it sounds so dramatic, I had nothing, now I have everything, but who are you going to attract?
The rags to riches stories usually attract people who are, your audience has a huge variety of different types of business owners. But for example, if you're a business coach and your story is about rags to riches and how you were homeless and a drug addict thrown in jail and now you have a multi-million-dollar business, well, who are you going to attract? You're going to attract people who are in that same situation that you were, right? You're not going to attract people who've already achieved certain success and just are looking for your help. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it has to be what you're trying to accomplish, right? So that's a great point. It's absolutely about the stories you tell. And people need to remember that the hero's journey and the rags to riches story is far from the only story that they can tell.
That is true. And another thing as well is that you have to be strategic. You can create rags to riches stories, but then you have to offer somebody such a small value product that it's easy for them to invest in it, and then you have to focus on growing massive audiences so you can make money with this low priced product, right? But a lot of times I see business coaches who are doing this. They're telling these wrong stories, attracting people who cannot afford them, and then they get very upset because people come onto their calls and they listen to them and they spend their time, waste both ends time, and then they say, well, I can't afford you, but you attracted them. And that's why then they say, oh, I hate sales calls. And but sales calls are easy when you're attracting the right person.
That's so true. And you know what? Nearly always, when I started my business, I mostly worked with people who are in the same position as me, trying to start a business or, trying to make their business work. And one thing I realized is that 90% of them were either not attracting the right people or they just couldn't afford them. And in looking deeper into their brand strategy, which they didn't have, I figured out that it was always a matter of you not knowing your ideal client well. And people think that an ideal client is about demographics or just interests, as I said, hobbies and pain points. Pain points is a big one. Yeah, sure, pain points are so important, but they're only a little piece of what you need to understand. You need to know so much. You need to know. I asked this question that I love. I probably asked you too. If your ideal client had a magic wand, what happens when they swipe it? Like, what is the one thing in their life that appears or changes or disappears? If you can answer that question, you have half of your content already taken care of, because you know exactly what message to put in there.
It's true. And it's true. And guys, how do I know? But how do I know? I can't guess it. You don't have to guess it. Get people talking to you. Get those 15 minutes calls booked, and surveys. Well, surveys actually don't work at the beginning because you might not have enough people, but talking to people. And also I think that sometimes people are trying to be ready before they act. So they are so confused and they don't do anything. And we're talking these two I don't know even how, it's not terminus, but the two things are very intertwined: the branding and the ideal client. That's why our conversation goes between, because branding is knowing you, yourself, and then the ideal client you will know then, and then you'll feed yourself into that. So it sort of like creates this perfect match, right? And the more people you talk to, especially, you will see, I know for a fact, in my life it was so confusing, especially the pain points and frustrations. And I was thinking, how can I get inside people's heads? But it took me 2 years to figure out. It took me 2 years. And then I had people who were my purely ideal client coming into my life. These are the moments when you have the aha moment, and it might take time, and it's okay, because it's a learning process. But when you know, and this is what I've seen. I've seen an ideal client for private coaching. I've seen an ideal client for my group coaching, the ideal person. And then the moment you met them, it becomes much easier, because they're literally feeding you the information. And even if you were just talking to that one person that you already know, you're getting so much inspiration of what they actually want,
Yeah. Actually, so 2 things here. Number 1, the most successful business owners I have ever known spend a huge amount of their time when they got started just getting on calls with people for free and just literally talking to them, having a conversation, asking questions. 15, 20-minute call, 30-minute call, as long as it takes to learn the answers to the questions that will help you frame your ideal client, frame your brand strategy, and sell your products and services. Because if you don't talk to them, how are you going to know what they want and what they don't want? And most importantly, what they think they need. Because people never know what they need. They think they know, but really, they only know what they want.
They're assuming, right? They're assuming.
They're guesstimating.
But you know what assuming is? The word assume. And I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it. Years ago, I worked in this restaurant, in a hotel, and the hotel manager was horrible. And he was always saying to me, do not assume, because assume is making us of you and me. But he is so right. It is so right. I hate quoting him because, he wasn't a nice person, but it's, these days I can see that you're assuming that I'm going to prepare this course, I'm just getting a launch. You're not even visible. You have never done a live video. You have 60 people in your group and 300 friends on Facebook. Launch to who? Just because you do something. This is not a performance where you come on stage, you did something, and then the round of applause. This is like you're on stage, there's no one there. You need to feel the room. Right?
Exactly.
And this is funny because they assume that this is something that's going to sell, then they get upset because nobody bought.
Yeah.
Do it differently. Do it on the other side. Do your research first. So many people jump into online business offline as well without any research.
Yeah.
If there is any demand. I'm going to finish while we're pointing out all the bad things. I'm going to ask you this last question. What is, in your opinion and your experience, so maybe we already spoke about it, maybe not, what is the biggest mistake people who start, business owners who are only starting, they come online, what's the biggest mistakes they make in terms of their branding? Or in any other way that you see and you want to point out?
Well, the one I'm going to point out is pretty much in terms of their branding, but that affects their entire business and their sales and everything from that point on. And that is not working on their origin story, because people today don't understand the importance of, there's 3 stages to positioning yourself as an expert, as a leader that people want to buy from. And the first one is the most important one, building the emotional connection with your audience. There's that. Then there's building trust, then there's building authority. But you cannot build those second 2 stages if you don't build the emotional connection first. And building the emotional connection is impossible without knowing exactly what your origin story is. Oh, and the second biggest mistake they make is assuming that their origin story is literally just some rags to riches story of who they were and who they are now. There is so much more to it. There's specific parts to it. It's really... it's not that complicated, but it takes time. It takes weeks for most people, if not months, to figure out. But once you do, your entire business suddenly is put into perspective, and you know exactly what your path is and who you want to attract, and you do it much more effortlessly than before.
That's actually true. Actually, Desislava did a brand audit on my website, and we were working on the origin story. And I have to agree that when I rewrote it, and Desi said, "Okay, signed off," I felt, I actually felt, and I didn't expect. I thought, okay, well, it's going to be ready, but I felt even more empowered because that never stops. That clarity, getting more and more clarity in your business, it just doesn't stop. And then I felt, and it was so funny because when I posted in our BBS group, I posted that origin story. The person who fits my ideal client avatar was the one who first commented on that story in a very, very emotional way. Well, I said, well, it must work now, because if you're commenting, you're sort of a person in that age group with that experience, with, a lot of things that probably it is working, so it gives you this extra level of connection as well. So that brings me to something that we're going to make a little shameless plug here. And before I even ask Desislava to tell us what it is, I'm going to say, this is a resort, right? That's, for what it is, it's probably the best, the most in-depth resort that you can get to start really getting clear on your branding or working on your branding. And it's just only out for a little while. So tell us what it is.
Yeah, it's actually only been a few weeks now that I realized, which is hilarious because hundreds of people now have access to it. Yeah, I think it was about 200 last time I checked, which is amazing. It's called the Little Branding Playbook. It took me, I'm not kidding you, I spent the last 12 months thinking about a resource that I want to create that is concise, that gives people exactly what they need to start thinking about their brand strategy in a super strategic way, because this has been missing from the market. Other branding professionals, they have these weird checklists or quick freebies that really don't do much for people, So once I found the gap, it took me 12 months to come up with the resource. I actually only created it in 3 days once I knew the whole positioning of it, the branding of it.
It's all about finding that gap, the sweet spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you say, oh, hang on a second, this is, well, I have to say, this is probably the best and the clearest, the one that gives me most clarity, because branding as an area is extremely confusing. It's confusing people because, sometimes people talk about branding, but they are talking about, the big corporations and all those examples. And you're like, how am I going to apply this to me? I'm just like a one woman in an office, so it gets very, very confusing. Where with the Little Branding Playbook, there are steps you can take. They're literally actionable steps after every piece of information. You get this golden nugget, just only what you need to know, because that's the best way to learn. What you need to know, take action. What you need to know, take action. And it goes through all the important things, and I absolutely love it. Where can we get it? Well, I have it, but where can others get it? And it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful ebook I've ever seen. So.
And now I have the best designers, Guna. But yeah, I will give you the link for your audience. So it's a special discount code where they can get it only for $30 instead of $97, because I'm cool like that and your audience is badass. And once they get it, they actually get free access to my most popular masterclass, Content Revolution, instead of paying $100 for that. So there you go.
Oh my God, guys, I think I have all of your masterclasses. Like, talking about over delivering, right? Now, if you want to make it and you want to become really someone who everybody is raving about, over deliver, because this perception of value is important. But if you want, I'm not even talking about how brilliant this masterclass is, right? But if you want to get something and just get like showered with value, get yourself a little branding playbook and get yourself the Content Revolution Masterclass, because it's absolutely amazing. It's out of this world. And I'm telling you, and I am the Queen of Visibility, and you need to trust me. So on this lovely note, thank you so much, Desislava, for being my amazing guest today. I'm really, really excited we could do this. And I will see you guys all next week with another episode of Show Up, Stand Out. Thank you so much for watching, and stay cool. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.